Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Prepper Podcast. And I'm joined today by Rob. Rob is from Off Grid Scotland. That's not an energy company. It does sound like an energy company when I say it like that, but it's a YouTube channel. How are you doing, Rob?
Yeah, I'm not bad, Mike. How are you?
Not so bad, not so bad.
Good.
So, Rob, you are living my dream pretty much. And that's why I wanted to get you on the show to pick your brains completely. Yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know, I'll pop it on the bottom now so you can see it. But Rob has, I came across his YouTube channel, which is Off Grid Scotland. He also has Instagram, which is the same, but with 123 at the end. And he's basically living the prepper dream, in my opinion. So the first question, Rob, to everyone on here is, are you a prepper? Do you class yourself?
No, I don't think I would. It's not that I don't have a mindset that a prepper might have. Mm-hmm. It's just that I probably wouldn't put myself in that category.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So what do you think makes you different? Is it just like the whole stockpiling side of things?
So I suppose the main thing is I've never looked into prepper lifestyle. I have watched prepper YouTubers, and because of my military background, I do have a mindset of perhaps being prepared for the future. But yeah, maybe what you just said there with the stockpiling of, but I don't fully understand the prepper lifestyle enough to be able to say that I was. Do you know what I mean? Like I haven't earned that badge, so it's not that I'm not preparing, but I'm perhaps not using preparing as my main objective. So perhaps that's why I would say I'm not. Although that doesn't mean I don't think about it, and that moving to Scotland wasn't a major consideration. Yeah. With the future and the way that the climate's going to, perhaps the direction it's going. So I'm not a prepper, but I could be.
Yeah, I mean it's a massive decision to take on something that you've taken on. What kind of triggered that for you? Was there a specific instance, or has it been something you've wanted to do for a while?
We decided to move to Scotland because we'd always wanted to live somewhere with a lot of nature in it, and Scotland I think is the best place in England to get that's as wild as you could get. Wales is close, but I think Scotland's just a bit, it's like the big game. If you want to move to the real deal, then Scotland just felt like the place to go. And my wife's dad's Scottish, so it just appealed to us a bit more. The price of the properties were a big factor because you can get a lot more land here. In fact, I'm not sure anywhere else in the UK you can actually buy land, considerable land, easily. Scotland, it seems to be that there is a bit of land available up here. So our freedom, I think, because you can get the amount of land and the neighbours aren't quite so crammed in, we felt like we would be able to do what we wanted to do here without annoying anybody. Like I wanted to run power tools and make a bit of noise if I wanted to, and just not have somebody that I was going to bug. It wasn't that I want to do it and I don't care about them, it's that I didn't want to annoy any neighbours. So that was a big consideration for us. But it's maybe been a dream for 10 years because my life changed quite a lot with the different career choices. So it wasn't from childhood, although I did want freedom since then. So yeah, that's been one of the reasons.
That's cool. I've looked at Scotland as well because my partner's Scottish. Her father lives up there. It's quite similar. They're from Stirling.
That's a very nice area.
Yeah, we've looked up there a lot of times. What made the decision for? Obviously, there's a lot of farms available. There's a lot of houses available. What made you do the decision of off grid?
Well, there's two sides to that because we could have bought an actual house as well. So we looked at land, and there was land with houses, and there was land with grid connectivity, as you mentioned. But being off grid for us has always been a really key. I don't know if you could see, there's an electricity pylon right behind me here. So the plot actually has power to it. But we always wanted to be off grid, partly to be self-sufficient. But I mean that as in not reliant on utility companies. So we just wanted to be generating our own electricity, and kind of it's just up to us. Because I didn't like the amount of money we were paying to all the utility companies, and I didn't like the fact that you were in somebody else's pocket. So we always just wanted to be off grid, and we decided that because of that, if we bought a house, chances are we're going to be paying a premium to have a house as well. So we thought if we don't want off grid, property without grid connectivity is usually cheaper because it's harder to live here. I actually find it easier. We have better power here than everybody else who's connected to the grid because theirs always goes down and ours is actually pretty stable. So that's the reason we chose somewhere without a house, without grid connectivity, because that was actually what we wanted. So it worked for us and it was cheaper. So it was a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah, it can often be a big cost up front with stuff like that. The same with, are you on the sewage? Or is you had to do all that yourself as well?
Yeah, we're off everything, so we don't
Yeah.
have we don't have there's no availability of sewage, there's no availability of water, and there's no availability of internet. There is an availability for power, so there are power lines that run through our property, so we could get connected to the electricity grid if we wanted, but everything else is just not available. So we had to do everything else.
Yeah. What's the best thing about it? What have you enjoyed most about the process of that transition from being part of that rat race to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, to be honest, the best thing is just knowing that it's up to you. Like, it was kind of funny because when you move up to this kind of project and because if you know our projects, you know that we moved into basically a field. There's no house, no nothing here. So we went from nothing to now having all of the utilities we would need, and not having to, like, we're suddenly completely off the system. People define off grid differently, don't they? We're not. There's a road just here. Some people define off grid as not having internet, but we're off the national grid, if you like. So we don't pay. We're not reliable. No other utility company has their, has control over our systems. And we had Starlink internet, which felt a little bit like we were still in that, because they behave a little bit like a utility company. We changed that to 4G, which is why we've had internet problems. 4G internet, which is actually, although you still got a contract, you're much more in control of it because it's the SIM card, and they don't, like Starlink, have their hardware, they control the software. It's just a kind of control system, whereas we're now completely out of that. So the best bit is just being free, and it does actually feel, I was like, are you going to feel better, like, or is that just something you think? But no, it really does feel good.
Yeah, I noticed one of your most popular videos on the channel was beating Starlink internet with a £10 4G SIM card. 247,000 views. What was that one all about then? Was that about the transition?
Yeah, so I actually kind of filmed that thinking it wasn't going to do that well. I've had some videos that I've been like, oh, people are going to love this, and it just flopped. And then there's that one that I thought, I'm going to do the job and I'll film it anyway. I think people loved it because they either loved it or hated it, because a lot of people really like Starlink as a company, and I understand that. They're really into Elon Musk and all of his businesses. I was, having used it, we got it because we thought it was going to be great, and we were sort of on that train. We liked the idea of it. In reality, we realized that those services that people charge you for that are promising easy are often not. I think the best way I'm going for now is custom, like Raspberry Pi computers, Linux operating systems, like all of the stuff that's open source software. And I think the reason that did so well is because it polarized people. People either loved Starlink and hated the fact I was beating it and claimed I didn't, or they loved the fact that I was able to leave that type of service, or they were just really into radio communications and just loved the fact that I was messing it all up.
It's weird that, though, with YouTube, you could spend all the time editing and making the perfect video, and it doesn't go anywhere. And then you can film something on your phone in seconds.
Yeah.
What's the biggest hurdle you've faced making this transition?
Biggest hurdle. It's not, I don't think everybody would have this, but the humidity here for us specifically is quite a challenge, because it's wet all the time and we're very high. So the difference between where our plot actually is and 2 miles that way, the elevation difference means that it's 2 degrees temperature change. It's 2 degrees cooler up here than it is a mile that way. So we're quite high up, which means, the altitude, the humidity is much higher, and it rains a lot higher up here. So it's been difficult keeping things dry, or like water management. So that's been the most difficult, but that wouldn't be for everybody. If you were going to do this and you didn't have to have our exact location, that wouldn't be hard. So for everybody else, I would say the difficult bit might be the transition. So as I said before, we had nothing, like nothing. We were digging holes to go to the toilet in the field. Like, it was like that for the first period of time. So the difficult bit, I think, was going from living like you were camping, which is fine because you can live that way. It's difficult transitioning from that to actually being connected, because there's a point at which you have a toilet but it doesn't flush. There's a point at which it does flush, but your water's not clean enough to drink in the taps. And then so that was quite difficult getting. We had pump explosions and stuff. So the shower would work and you're all lathered up after a bad day, and it would just explode whilst you're covered in soap, and then it's tipping outside and you've got to, and it exploded because it got wet from the rain. So the transition was very difficult. But you know, I think if anybody did this kind of thing, they would go into it not fearful of that kind of thing. I don't think you take on this type of project not expecting that to be difficult. So, and you know, looking back, it wasn't that bad. So I'd probably say it's none of it's unmanageable. It's all okay.
Yeah. Was there any, when with the hurdles and stuff like that, I've looked at in the UK, and the laws and stuff like that are just ridiculous. Some of them, if you get a certain amount of land and you can build an agricultural builder, was it easier in Scotland, legally wise?
No, so because I've got a history in construction and property development, so that's what we did before we came here. So I have a little bit of experience in that, which meant that affected why we bought this plot. So it has planning permission on it already for a house that we wanted to change. So we kind of know the planning game a little bit because we've done planning permissions and stuff. So I knew that this plot would be a good place to get planning. We also got pre-planning advice from them after we bought it, but before we moved up. So we made the decisions to do this knowing that it's a really good place to get planning. I think if you buy a plot and then try and solve those problems after, you can be met with really big problems because you're not like some places it's easier to get planning, and this one had planning, which is obviously way easier. But the fact it had planning was a big reason we bought the plot. If it hadn't got planning, I'd look at this and think they would never give planning, and if they did, it would take a lot of money and a lot of time. So yeah, I haven't come across the difficulties yet, just because we bought this because we knew it would be okay.
Yeah. So would that be like advice? Sorry, go on.
Scotland is far more open to like natural living, so I know that the planning policies up here will allow you to do more than England does. So it is supposedly easier here, although when I've spoke to people around, they have said that planning permission is still difficult. But I think if you approach it at the right angle, you'll be all right up here.
Yeah, I mean, you can wild camp everywhere there, right? So you could technically stay on your land as long as you wanted in a temporary abode anyway, right? So yeah, that's really cool. So would your advice be to somebody, I mean, because we'll have a lot of preppers who watch this show who they do want to do that. That's what they strive for. Would it be like to really research the land before going getting it?
So if you want to get planning, you need I had a message actually yesterday from somebody saying that they are having issues with planning because they want to stack containers on top of each other and build that style of house. And I think the thing is, no planner is going to agree to any type of planning like that because you're describing it wrong. If you did a nice, pretty technical drawing that was exactly the same dimensions as containers, but you just didn't mention the word container, don't mention tires, don't mention anything like that, but it doesn't mean you can't build it that way. You just have to frame it in the way that the planners are going to look at it as a house. And then if you want to construct it out of containers or recycled materials, that's a building control issue. And as long as you can demonstrate that you're doing that properly and it's got proper engine, you know, it's designed and it's going to withstand the loads that it has to, you might be able to do that. But don't go like lobbing that all at the planners, because they'll just be like, no way, because they'll just envisage this kind of wreck, which although you know and that might be wrong, because I have seen some container houses that look beautiful, but you have to frame it like they're used to receiving their application. So if they're used to speaking to architects, you have to submit the planning to be like they usually see it. So just don't frame it like that, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. For example, we're going to be milling some of these trees down here, using that for our timber. We're going to be doing straw bale walls, but you don't want to be lobbing that all in the application. You want to be saying it's going to be a timber built, not that it's your own timber here. And then later on, when you've milled it up, who's going to know the difference between a milled piece of timber that you've milled and that you've bought from the building yard? So you just need to be careful with what you say and just frame it like they want to hear it.
Is that because they want you supporting the economy, as in buying the timber from local sources and stuff? Or?
No, it's not. I just think because they're normal human beings, and planning agents, they'll sit on their computer and they'll see regular applications coming in. And as soon as yours comes in or somebody's comes in that's just, you know, completely different, they'll just be like, whoa. And then, you know, their initial response is going to be like, no, because it's different. So I'm not sure it's that they're actually, I think the planning officers individually aren't quite as high up in the ranking as that. So I'm not sure they really care if you're buying from building merchants or not, but they are definitely in the system. And if your application doesn't match the system, you're going to have a negative against you already. So if you can make your application look like it fits the system, and then what you've got to do as a clever builder is just try and work around that, try and get your own natural materials or whatever other things you want in whilst ticking their boxes. And it's a shame to say it, but if you don't do that, you probably won't get planning. They'll just say no, and then you'll just have a big fight on your hands. And you may eventually get it, but you'll have to go to appeals. Whereas if you just frame it correctly to start with, the human being sees it, matches all of his other applications, he'll just tick, off he goes. So
yeah, okay, better the devil you know. So he just, as long as it looks familiar to him, I like that. So for people looking to start this and stuff, obviously everyone thinks of cost of land, cost of planning permission, cost of building materials. Is there anything they should be considering that a lot of people forget? Is there any major costs that they should consider?
Well, yeah, I would say it's a bummer because everybody knows it. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know, but just keep in mind the solicitors' fees and the taxes and stuff. Because I think when you, well, we were property developers and we had a lot of people who bought stuff off us, and they would forget how much the legal fees might be or how much the tax might be. And if you've not factored in those, and then you suddenly discover sometimes it can be like 10 grand depending on how much you buy if you put all the solicitor and the agent's fees are for the seller, aren't they? But I'd say factor in those fees, but that's in the property purchasing. There can be other costs that come up later on, but I just say remember those. The building cost might be a bit different later on, but for purchasing, just remember the extra fees.
I mean, you've got a great advantage. Obviously, you're in property development and stuff like that. My next question was kind of hopefully going to get a bit of some sort of humor into this. I was going to ask you what's your mistakes? What things have you done that you think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that way? Is there anything that's like a
mistakes here?
Yeah,
in Scotland, I've made loads because I start projects. I've got no idea what I'm doing. So every single one of my videos, I start and I've never done it before ever. So it's I make mistakes in every video, which is why the videos are a bit. I don't make them pretty cohesive videos because it's usually I start and then I realize I can't do it. So one of the mistakes I made was I underspec'd our water pump, which is what I said earlier, where it blew up. So I bought a 12-volt water pump because initially when you start this kind of project, you want to save as much money as possible. So when we were looking at utilities, we looked at water pumps and they can be very expensive. So the piece of advice I'd say to everybody is don't cheap out because it will blow up on you when you really don't want it to. So unfortunately, if you want stuff to work, you're going to have to spend the money. So I bought a really cheap van pump, which is probably fine if you're using it for a tap in a van, but it was 12 volt. I put it under the caravan. It melted on me. I then bought another replacement, which was 150 quid. So it's not really cheap, but next to other bits, it is cheap. That blew up on me. So I then had to pull out the money and buy a 900 quid one, which is now fine. We bought an EcoFlow Delta Pro and diesel generator. That was good to start with, but that was £5,000. That lasted us a little bit, but then we outgrew it really quickly. So that was something I'd say within that, just spec your utilities properly to start with. It's going to be more expensive than you want to spend, but you need your utilities, so just make sure you spec them properly. And then the internet was a complete farce. That video that went well, I spent £1,000 on different bits, all of which didn't work, and then I had to swap all of it for a very simple box, which just works pretty well now. I mean, despite our problems today, but it actually is simple. So I've spent a lot of money on things that I didn't need. I've sold up in eBay, so I did recover quite a lot of costs. But if you're taking on a project like this, a lot of the stuff you do it's not been done before, or if it has, it's not been done in the way you need it to be done. So you're going to have to experiment, which means often the first, second, and third things you buy probably won't work, or if they do, they won't work with each other. So it means you're going to have to, So I've made tons of mistakes here, and there'll be more to come.
Yeah, a lot of our channel members and the people that join me on Prepper's Fireside are solar enthusiasts. Scottish Prepper 73 has got a full setup in his house. Are you primarily solar? Because obviously, I mean, it's not known for its tropical weather in Scotland, right?
Scotland. So Scotland, it's funny because we got our solar in the winter and it sucked, like really badly sucked. And the issues we've got here, you see the hill behind me, the sun rises behind the hill and sets, and in front of me that way is another hill. So we're right in the glen, which means that when the sun comes up, you've only got a really narrow window of solar time. And in the winter, the sun rises above that hill at 12 o'clock and it sets below that one at 2, and it's really low. So the solar in the winter is really bad. However, it's absolutely killing it this summer. Absolutely killing it. Because I never considered this, but Scotland's further north, so we've got longer days here than England does. So the solar is actually better here. Like we've only got 6 panels, and they were They're big capacity, but they're actually not crazy money. They're 180 quid each. I thought they were, you know, barely going to be capacity because 6 panels, not very many. It's pushing out 4. Today, I've had every heater we've got on all day. I've had dehumidifiers on. I've been the clothes dryer on, the tumble dryer on. I did a clean cycle in the washing machine just to get rid of the power because we've got so much coming in that it's just you don't know what to do with it. So in the summer, solar here is actually really good, but not good enough to rely on only. Like you'll have days where most days are good, and then you'll have a day where we're actually in the cloud base. So there's no, because you're not like clouds covering the sky, you're actually in the clouds, and in those days you'll get no solar. So you do need another way of powering your devices.
So what have you done for that? Are you on generators after that, or are you looking at wind power?
We've got micro hydro. So we built a micro hydro system. You see the hill behind me. It means we've got elevations. So what we did is we put an inlet. It's actually further that way. No, it might be there. Put an inlet up there. And then we collect the water, send it down a pipe down there like that, and it goes into a turbine, which is over there like that, and that just spins. And that is, if you were going to do any off-grid stuff, you need to get hydro, because hydro generates power all the time, so it generates all night, which means that even if you've got a small amount of electricity coming in, we have quite a lot, but it means that it's always coming in. So you've got a whole 12 hours at night, or whatever the dark period is throughout the year, that's charging your batteries continuously. Whereas solar, when it goes down, you've got nothing, and then you have to wait a whole nother day before it comes back in. So we've got hydro. I've also got a big wind project that we're doing up the top of the hill. So we're building a kind of new style wind turbine. And then we've got 2 more water projects. We've got a big water wheel going down there and a vortex turbine going over there. So we've got quite a lot of projects on awesome. Renewables. But right now, we're on the hydro turbine and solar.
What's the kind of, is the hydro turbine, is that more cost effective? Because solar can be very expensive to set up. You can have a cheap option, but is it more or less the same, or?
It's so with either of them, you have to get the infrastructure, and that's the expensive bit. So it's not the panels themselves that are expensive. It's that you need the inverter, you need the batteries, and you need the fuses and all that. So once you've got those, the solar is actually really cheap because you just need the panels. Hydro is more expensive because you need the pipe work. The turbine was about £1,000 for the actual turbine bit, and then the pipe work was about 500 quid, and the inlet was free because I made it. So it's about 1,500 quid for that. But we've got a very long run because we go all the way up there down. So if you've got a smaller run, it's cheaper. But both of them require the infrastructure. So if you have to buy the batteries and the inverter, then anything off grid is expensive. But solar is cheaper because the panels are just cheap. So
cool. I mean, that's obviously, you've mentioned a few different energy projects you've got there. One of my close to the end questions was, what's the goals going forward? What's the dream? Like, is there an end, or are you just going to keep adding to this?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I don't know if there's an end goal for the whole plot. We've definitely got visions of self-sustainability. Yeah, kind of like, producing most of what we need, but it's not necessarily from the same angle that most people might approach it. I think it's because if we can, I like to do it. So if you like it, it's more like an invention. I like the idea of creating systems. So yeah, it's not like other people might want to be self-sufficient. Ours is more like control. It's control and power, like personal power, personal control. If you've got everything here you might need, anything can happen, which is why I say I'm not a prepper, but I kind of think like one sometimes. It's like anything can happen, and you're within your circle, you've got everything you might need. So the end goal here is going to be, I'm going to have a lot of my crazy, renewable inventions over the place to generate the power. We've got a big, kind of like a greenhouse barn that I'm going to make down there from some more of this timber that's going to have hydroponics in it. So we need more power to run the lights and the pumps and stuff for that. We've got livestock we're going to be doing down there, which we're going to be feeding off of some of the waste material from the hydroponics and the mushroom farm that we're growing. And then we've got reforesting. We're going to reforest the hill up there, and then build the house. We've got the house to do as well, and then we've got the barn and the workshop. So the end goal is like, we want to kind of infrastructure, with all the way from food to vegetables to animals, power, workshop, house. So that's I suppose the end goal, but it changes every time we get there.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool. So while we've got you here, tell us about the YouTube channel. Obviously, did you just start that because you thought this is going to be interesting to see how this goes? Or
yeah, well, we always, I always watched YouTube. Like I've learned all my stuff from YouTube. That's how I learn. I just pop on there and I just watch some people, and then that's where I figure all my stuff out. So, I thought we did a YouTube channel back on the property development we did before, and I just thought, you know what, we'll just continue it here. And my first video, which was we're moving to the Highlands of Scotland, I just kind of said in it like, I might film some, I might not. Like, if you don't want to see it, I won't bother. And I kind of explained some of the stuff we did. Most of the feedback was far better than it was before. The content we had before was construction and kind of custom made furniture and stuff.
Yeah.
And then lots of people seemed to like it. And I thought, well, I always watch YouTube to learn my stuff. So maybe I can be helpful to some people. So I just decided to keep filming. And as I've kept filming, people still seem to want to watch it. So as long as people want to see it, we'll just keep filming it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what's sneaky peek? What's the next video going to be going up?
Oh, the next one will be, I don't know. I'm working on the workshop, so it could be the workshop being finished off. Could be the office being concluded. It could be the big projects such as the wind turbine. We're designing it at the minute on the computer, so we're getting all of those CAD drawings up and done. But it's going to be like a 10-part series because I've got to make a little wind station up there to measure the wind speed, to check the angles we're going to do it. We're doing a variable prop wind turbine with a gear system inside so that it can change the angle of the blades as the wind speed changes so that we can get the most power from it. It's got maglev, so we've got magnetic bearings to hover the turbine off the top, and it's vertically mounted. So it's going to be one of these turbines that instead of the fan being like that, it's like a tunnel, and then the turbine's on here, which spins on the top. So that's going to be a big series that we're going to do on that.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, but it's quite a big, and I'm making it out of scaffold poles, and I was considering using material soaked in wax, like ship sails, instead of making these crazy forms, so that we can try and do it affordably. But that's coming up, but it probably won't be the next video because I'm still working the design.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I look forward to seeing that. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here and telling us about your journey. And I'm sure at some point now you've made the mistake of giving me your email, I'll be picking your brain at some point about something.
Yeah. Well, there's no worry. We're available in the comments all the time. So yeah, let me know if you do need any, you got any questions or anything.
Right. Okay. Much appreciated. Don't forget, everyone, go and check out the channel Off Grid Scotland. You're also on Instagram with the 123 at the end. Yeah, and go over there, show him some love. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, all that lovely stuff in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.